Welcome back to Hoop City with Paul Sir here on your Sports Leader, Sports 1440, and of course on all of our podcast networks and with YouTube. You can watch us anytime, anywhere. But I'm pleased to be joined with the head coach of the new 5A category Girls High School Basketball Championship, Alan Gibb. Alan, thanks so much for making time for me.
No, thanks. I appreciate you having me on. Thanks for doing that.
Well, Alan, I was able to get over last Friday and watch your team defeat McGrath, and we spoke briefly afterwards, and I believe you said it was the sixth time you played a very good McGrath team all year. I know you were 6-0 against them, but first of all, how do you feel about Alberta going to a 5A category?
Yeah, I think it's great. I think a lot of, if you look at the U.S. side of things, they've got 5A and 6A, and so I think it's good. I think it gives an opportunity for some schools to go 4A as well. So it just gives more opportunity to play in a provincial championship type game. And then from the 5A standpoint, I think for us anyways, it's nice. Sometimes when we were doing 4A and you'd get 16 teams, that's a little tough with 16 boys and 16 girls teams to make everything happen. And I think it's tough. Like if you look at the US, the state side, how they do it versus how we do it, it's hard. We would have a game on a Thursday night, used to be, and then 2 on Friday and then 1 on Saturday. That's 4 games in 3 days, and that's tough to do. And then they went to, I think it was 2 on Thursday and 1 Friday, 1 Saturday. And that's great. But, I think going to 3 games is nice. Obviously, if you can get that 1, 2, 3, or 4 spot, you get a bye. And so I like it. I like that there's 12 teams in it. I think that it gives an opportunity, like a Spruce Grove who went and won 4A this year, an opportunity to hang a banner in a year that would be a little tougher, maybe in the 5A. And so I think it's a good thing. Yeah, I do. For us, whether it's 4A or 5A, I think, in the end, it maybe doesn't really matter. I mean, for us, we're competing, in either category but yeah, I don't see any downside to it.
I think that's well put, and I fully agree with you. I think having the 5A ability to reduce the size of the best teams, being in a 12-team as opposed to a 16-team event, and you hit it right on the head, Alan. Like at no other point, unless you go to certain tournaments, do you ever play 2 games in one day. But to be vying for the ultimate championship in a province and have to play 2 games in one day, that really stretches, I think, what the athletes are supposed to be doing, which is to be putting their best on the court against the best opponents that they can possibly play against.
Yeah, for sure. So
4A or 5A, this is 3 in a row, correct?
No, we had a break last year. We had 3 in a row. And then last year we were basically had a young group of kids. I think I had 6 grade 10s on the team and rolled with them, and now they're all grade 11s. So yeah, last year we were in the provincial championship. We lost to Spruce Grove in Foothills. I think in the quarterfinals they went on to lose in the 4A championship game to Scona. So we had a good showing, but just a really young team. Pushed Spruce Grove to the limit. I think we were down 4 or 6 with a few minutes left. And anyways, yeah, so last year was a break, but we did with Delaney in grade 10, 11, and 12, we were able to win 3 in a row. And then last year was not. And then this year we're starting, hopefully working on another 3-peat. So
pretty exciting thought at that. And Alan, talk about this year's team. You had the youngsters from last year maturing. I'll give you a quick observation. One of the things that Raymond and McGrath and Cardston are noted for are all-around athletes, multi-sport athletes. But one thing that just jumped right out at me, having seen your team for the first time this year, was I don't want to use the term just athletic, because I think that's a kind of a nebulous term that I really don't know what that means, other than watching your girls play. They all can run, and they all have their fitness was excellent. Their court speed was excellent. Your systems are very, very good. And you had several players that could really shoot the three out of your sets, and you look for each other very, very well. Excellent teamwork. But what struck me was the competitiveness and the court speed that your girls possess. Does that come from being, well, number one, good athletes, but number two, multi-sport athletes?
Yeah, I think it could, it could come from that. But I think, just generally speaking, I think that this year we were lucky to have a really deep team of young athletes, no seniors. So you've got kids that are really competing to play. And I had 11 kids on the team, and I was, this was a unique year for us in that, especially in a small town, you don't always have a deep team. You might have, a deep 2 or 3, but right. This year we had a unique situation in Raymond that just came together with 11 kids that really deserved to play. I think I had 7 grade 11s and 4 grade 10s. And I had 11 kids that deserve to play and that can all develop and play in the future. I mean, my 11th kid on the bench at the start of the year is a grade 10 kid that is long and athletic, maybe the most athletic kid in the whole group. And she played JV. They won a JV championship and shoots it really well. A great volleyball kid. And she's 10th, 11th man. And, I've got to find a way for her to be part of it next year. And you didn't even see her as part of this group. So in practice, they go hard. This is the first year, like in previous years, I had my starters against the backups, and there's no chance. Like I had to just mix them up. This year I can put my starters against my subs, and I think the subs are going to win. And that's the kind of grittiness that they have. Obviously the starters, do have some upside, some, there's a reason they're a starter, but the backups, whether we're doing a shooting drill or whether we're practicing offensive sets, whether we're just playing, 3-on-3 or 1-on-1, the subs are consistently beating my starters this year. And the competitive level has been, something that's I haven't experienced before as a coach. And that probably you saw that going in. And I think teams that schemed against us, they counted on stopping, a Hayden Hall or Pippa, limiting them. And then, it's funny, in that provincial final, I'm watching Quincy Baines and Elle and kids coming off the bench, knock down threes and take it to the hole and finish, with Hayden having 3 points against McGrath and Pippa having 11 when they averaged in the 20s. And we're still spanking that team. And it's because those other kids are so good, and you can't focus. I mean, you can try to focus on the top 2 kids, but it's just not possible with this team. It's the deepest team I've ever had. It's a competitive from top to bottom. They're probably the most competitive team I've ever had. I think with some of Delaney's teams in grade 10, 11, and 12, you can argue. I mean, talk to certain individuals in Raymond, they'll argue that Delaney's grade 10 year was the best team we've ever seen. I look at Delaney's grade 12 year as the most firepower that we've ever had but that was with 3 or 4 kids, but really high end kids. And then this year, I think they're probably the deepest, maybe the best team. Just top to bottom. We in those other teams, we'd never had a 6'3" post player that can stretch to the 3 and knock it down and can be really dominant on the boards. Obviously those teams had Delaney, which is an X factor, but Pippa shot the ball probably better. She was 60, 40, 80 this year. So, and high volume. So 60 from 2, 40 from 3, and 80 from free throw line. And then led our team in assists and steals. And then defensively was our best defender on ball. And so you just can't, there's just a difference between those two, but who's bringing the most value to the team. I mean, Delaney could definitely just carry a team by herself, and that's a unique thing and a nice thing for a coach to know. But just we'll see. I mean, this team's young; they've got another year to get under their belt, and so before somebody told me early on, they said, "Hey, this is the best team you ever had." I said, "No, it's not." I said, "They haven't done anything yet." I said, "How can you say that? They haven't. We don't even know if they're going to win provincials." So, they got to do some things. I remember my nephew strutting around in warm-ups one time. Their team was pretty dang good. I think they were second in provincials. No, they lost to Ainley, a boys team, a few years back, and they had Saren Westrup, and my nephew was on there. I remember in Carson watching them, they thought they were something. They lost that game, and afterwards I said, you two have not done anything. So until you earn something and do something, then you can start strutting around, but don't be acting like that. And that's kind of the way I am. Like you earn it first and you do something before you think you've accomplished anything. So
what a novel thought. Win before you celebrate, as opposed to, like you said, and I think that's something I saw in your team, Alan, was this team was businesslike. You were methodical on the defensive end. Your team defense was very, very good. But also on the offensive end, the plug and play type of team that you had, where as I witnessed, 7, 8, 9, 10 deep. And I know the young lady that you referred to, who was she's quite slender, and
Yep.
she came out there and she looked very young. But my gosh, it took all of about 10 seconds to see how fast she was, how skilled she was with the ball, and making good decisions with the ball. And that was another thing that I really want to compliment you and your team on, was the way the girls made decisions. They made the right play at the right time. They found their open teammates, and they definitely picked apart whatever McGrath threw at them and countered it with somebody that was wide open. So there's a basketball IQ collectively that's very impressive for a bunch of grade 10s and 11s.
Yes. Yeah, they're definitely a high IQ group, but at the same time, we do focus a lot on exactly what you said, making basketball simple and making the right read or decision. And so that's a big part of the way I coach and the way I kind of bring my kids up and train them. I mean, it's not very hard. It's, if you're open, shoot it. If you can drive it to the paint, you drive it to the paint. If you draw to, you pass the ball and hit the open teammate. So it's pretty simple. And if they don't do that, that's what I'm coaching up. That's what I'm hard on them about. Right. And if someone forces an issue or forces a play, I don't just turn my head. I let them know that was, not the right decision. But at the same time, I'm quick to tell them to be ready to shoot the ball, ready to attack. Like, I'm not taking anything away from any kid out there. They have the opportunity. I tell them we want to figure out roles and figure out what's going to make the team as a whole the best that we can be. But at the same time, every kid has to be able to be ready to shoot, ready to attack, and ready to make a play for somebody else. And that's kind of the way and the style that we play. And I have the kids that can do that, and they bought into that, and they were pretty good. I mean, I think they had some really good times this year, but it seems like at provincials, they things came together really well for them. And obviously throughout the year, we tried stuff and did stuff. I mean, we played probably 3/4 of the season in a 2-2-1 press back into a 2-3 zone. It was kind of our bread and butter. And we get to the provincial semifinal against McGrath, and we decided to go straight man-to-man. And it worked. We were good at it. And we played man-to-man, and we practiced man-to-man in practice. And then we went straight man-to-man the whole provincial final. And I said to my girls after, I said, it's interesting that we start the year off man-to-man, and then we go to this 2-3 zone with the press, and it really sparked us. And we felt like it was really allowing us to score early. And all of a sudden we go away from it. And I just thought the way that we played McGrath in the zone final, we were in that press, and, playing them 6 times after they figure out how to beat that. And so we weren't effective against them in the zone final at all in the first quarter. And so we went away from it, and then we struggled, and then we went to man-to-man, it worked for us in the second half. And so we kind of rolled with that, and it was a good decision, obviously. So yeah, these kids are, they're smart about what they do, and they listen and they buy into things, and they have a belief that this team can can accomplish good things if they do the right thing. So
I'm talking with Alan Gibb. Alan is the head coach of the Raymond Comets girls provincial 5A champions this year, the fourth in 5 years, if I've got it right here, Alan. So 4 and 5, and first year of 5A here on Hoop City with Paul Sir on Sports 1440. Alan, I know you've got to go, but before we go, I would be remiss, because I think everybody that ever is aware of, and if you're not aware of Raymond and Southern Alberta basketball, then you don't pay attention to basketball in Alberta. Most people are aware, and everybody, I think, still to this day scratches their head and just says, how in the world do they do it? A small town coming with that many athletes doing that well. I know it's a much bigger discussion for a different time. Yeah. But if you could point to one or two things that you think make the uniqueness that is very real and generational in your community so prevalent and so consistent, what would you say one or two things are that you are a very good player yourself, and you guys were, like we were talking before you came on, you and your Raymond team played McGrath in the provincial finals in 1993 in the 4A provincial. And so what is it about what your communities are all about that brings this excellence so consistently to the forefront?
Yeah, I mean, that's a big discussion, and we could go on and on about lots of things. But I think,
yes,
if I was to identify two things, I would say the first thing that comes to mind is history and tradition, and looking at those that came before. So we are in a small town, which means that we know everybody and we see everything that goes on. And I remember as a kid, watching Richard Bonney in high school, and I was in junior high, and I just watched what he did and how he handled the game, how he shot the ball, how he dribbled the ball. And I used to talk to people and I remember my uncle once saying, he dribbles the ball from his house to school every day, things like that. Whether he did or didn't, I would hear stuff like that, right? And it'd say, oh, he has the basketball is like a yo-yo on his hand, like he's got it on a string and things like that. And so I watched what he did, and that inspired me to figure out how to do that and what made him that way, right? And so in a small town, we've just had the luxury of for whatever reason at a early on, whether it was the tall strips or whoever it was, that we had individuals or heroes that we looked up to. Now these kids have NBA and WNBA and NCAA, and back in the day we just didn't have access to that a lot. So I think we looked up to those people. So I think tradition and history and having a vision of what we can actually do. And then in the small towns, like, everybody shows up to the games, right? So you're sitting there going, like I would say to my kids when they were younger, I'd say, hey, at a young age, I'd say, what do you want to be and do when you get to high school? What actually do you want to accomplish? What's your goals? What do you like this? Do you want to be on that floor? So they would say, yeah, I want to be the best player in I want to be the best player in Raymond. I want to be the best player on my team. Whatever their goals would, then I can say, okay, well, this is what you have to do to get there. And so there's a pattern, and you've seen it. So there's a formula that comes with that, and then there's an idea that you're going to be there one day. And so, I always tell people you can't put the work in when you get there. You've got to put the work in, and you got to have some foresight. And so I think that's number one for those kids. And so kids work for it. And then, number two is access. So I'd say access to gymnasiums and that kind of prevalence. And you'll see that if there's access to gymnasiums and kids have a passion for it, because if you have a passion for it, but you can't get in the gym, it's pretty hard to put the work in. I mean, if you're trying to put in, say you're putting up shots. I mean, I showed, I showed Delaney and Sage and all those. I would read, about your son, right? And shooting and putting up thousands of shots a day or whatever. I mean, I remember reading that somewhere along the lines of what he tried to do. And it was amazing. Right. And really, more than my kids did. That was a lot of shots. And so things like that, like I would look up to Richard, I would look up to any individual that was really good and try and figure out what they did and try to, and so if you have that desire and you want to do it, it's like when COVID hit, we were scrambling because we're consistently in the gym, like 4 or 5 days a week type thing from a grade 4 age. So you look at what my kids do or what Delaney does or whatever, or Pippa, it's there's no secret to it. I mean, they have some athleticism obviously, but they put the work in, and it's 4 or 5 days a week, and it's a sacrifice, and it's a consistent sacrifice. And that's priority number one for them if they want to get where they want to go. And so I think it's access to gyms, and Raymond has that. When you take access away from Raymond kids, you'll see a huge slide, right?
But Alan, I loved what you just said though, and no secrets, access to gyms, put in the work, not be in the gym, put the work in while you're in the gym. That has that's helping you get better. And what you've done and what your community does generationally is you have athletes in a variety of sports that put the work in when nobody's looking.
Yeah.
And you've got tradition, and you've got, like you said, heroes, you've got the past, you've got families, but the fact is, what makes it so unique, and I know this isn't lost on you, and it's certainly not lost on me, you're a small community. So to be able to percolate to the top the way you do is just something I have respected in the entire time that I've had the privilege of living in Alberta. And it's one of my favorite aspects of basketball in Alberta is what you and the town of Raymond and McGrath and Cardston, Medicine Hat, just Southern Alberta, you've just got something that's so special. And bluntly put, Alan, you're the cream of the crop of a very good crop. And nothing but kudos to you, your family, and your community. I just can't say, I just can't elevate enough of what you accomplish year in and year out.
Well, thank you, Paul. I appreciate that. That's kind words, and we appreciate all those that have come before us here in Raymond and that have made that possible for me and for my kids, and we look to do the same, right? And we do. It's fun. It's an exciting experience, and I'm glad that these girls were able to see that through. It doesn't always happen. There's lots of teams in the province and lots of great players that don't get a chance to cut those nets down, and
right.
And that's sad, right? I was one. I had lots of good players on my team in that year that didn't get to cut those nets down, and and McGrath had that opportunity, and we remember that too, right? And that right. Fuels us a little bit.
Well, gee, you mean you're competitive, Alan? I would have never known that. So,
yeah.
Well, Alan Gibb, you've been generous with your time today. Congratulations to you, the Raymond Comets girls team. Kudos to your community, as I say. Very happy for your family and very proud as an Albertan of what Delaney's accomplishing down at BYU. And I hope we can have a more fulsome conversation at some point in the not too distant future about some other aspects of what Raymond and Southern Alberta basketball is all about. I think there's a lot of lessons everybody could learn, but you can hear them. It's like learning from a textbook. Yeah, the textbook's there. Actually, there's no magic.
Yeah.
But you got to put the time in, and you as a coach and your players as players all do that. So congratulations, Alan.
Thank you, Paul. Appreciate it.
Alan Gibb, head coach, Raymond Comets, 5A girls champion, joining me here on Hoop City with Paul Sir on Sports 1440. We'll be right back after these messages.